Welcome back to our 70th episode of the Launcher Farm Show, where I interview Curtis Fenn, who's the president of RedX. In this episode, Curtis and I talk about why it's important to fill your database very quickly to ensure you build a long-term and healthy pipeline. And Curtis shares how you can use different data points to create a system that enhances your farming strategies. And we talk about what you can do to curate important information and data so that you can provide value to your buyers and sellers and help you stand out against the competition. And Curtis shares a super easy way to create genuine conversations that build relationships in your farm and help eliminate hesitancy. And we talk about how top producers are generating business by door knocking and building relationships in their farm. Plus, we talk about a ton of other ideas that you can use in your geographic farm. So be sure to check out this episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Curtis. Welcome back to another episode of the Launch Your Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Curtis Fenn. He's the president of RedX. So Curtis, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Glad to be here. My name is Curtis Fenn. As he said, I'm president of RedX. If you haven't heard of RedX, you're either new in the industry or you don't do anything in your business to proactively generate leads. We've been around for almost 20 years in the industry, providing all kinds of seller leads to people, anywhere from expireds to for sale by owners to geographic areas and finding contact information. We're really good at data and finding people's information so that real estate agents can do a better job doing what they do.
Awesome. So what's your role in the company then, and how have you been involved then?
Sure. I've been involved for a very long time. So 16 of those 18 years we've been in business, I've been here. And so I've worn the hat of everybody from, cleaning the bathrooms for employees to traveling around the country and doing trainings with different brokerages and franchises to teach agents how to do what they do. Sales and marketing is my background. So that's why you and I connected more. And I sought you out a little bit because you're teaching people a marketing, methodology. And I believe that marketing and having things in your business to generate consistent lead flow in your business is the key to profitability and long-term sustainability. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's something I preach all the time about, is putting the right systems in place and using farming. Why I love farming is because you can layer in, and I teach about strategy stacking, that you can use different methods and different strategies to really build a much more balance in your business. And RedX provides a lot of services like that you can layer in. So let's get to the core of kind of what you guys do, and then let's talk about how we can use those kind of things in farming and how that relates.
Yeah. We believe in farming. We have, from the very beginning of time, even when we didn't provide any tools for farming, we used to always say that this is one of the things you have to have in your business. Because again, we're about client acquisition and helping people have consistent flow into their business. So we find contact information and narrow down the people that you should be going after to generate warm leads. So I think if I had to narrow down everything we do, is we help fill your CRM really quickly. And if you want to expedite filling your CRM, which eventually becomes the business long-term, that's what we help people do.
Yeah, it's important to speed up that process, like you said, if you can. And a lot of agents kind of go haphazardly, hoping they stumble into business. And if you can speed up that process to find more people, or more likely to find people who are further along the process, that's going to help get your pipeline filled, get your database filled with warmer leads, but also building long-term future leads, which is just as important too.
Exactly. So several years ago, we started looking at what we could do for more farming techniques. Not everybody wants to call expireds or for sale by owners, or certainly in Canada. I know you have a lot of followers in Canada. They can't even work expireds the way they do in the States. So we started looking at just geographic areas. So we have a product called GeoLeads, which is find an area, a neighborhood, a block, a street, whatever you want to do. And we help you find and identify everybody's contact information, all of the home details. So, everything that you would have from tax records would be in there, plus a whole bunch more, all the way down to this is the building material, a whole bunch of information about the people who live there. So financial information, equity position, estimated debt on the home and things like that. So again, to give insight into who they are, what the property is, what the neighborhood is like, and allow you to then take all of that information and create, using some of your strategies, Ryan, to put a system in place to work that geographic area, to farm that area.
Yeah, I want to dive into that point a bit, because I think it's important for agents to understand how important it is to understand who you are going after, who you're targeting, who's in that area, like you said, knowing the details of it. Because for a lot of agents, and again, I see this all the time because I talk to agents about farming, they want to have some get rich quick scheme or some easy thing where it's like, how do I just get in there? It's like, you have to know your product, you have to know who's there, you have to understand and do the research. You guys can help speed up the process with your systems, but at the end of the day, it's important to really know who you're going after. And when it comes to your farm, one of the things I teach called CPR, and it's positioning is one of the key parts. Is you position yourself as the expert and the ambassador, and you do that by learning the community, learning who's in there, learning who the builders are, learning any details and information that you can. And if you don't or aren't willing to do that, someone else will, and you may not get there. So using a product like yours, how would an agent kind of speed up that process then?
Yeah. So you spoke to me, so you'll have to just cut me off if I end up on a soapbox here. So this will I'll come full circle if that's okay, Ryan.
Yeah.
In today's world and today's buyer, it's different than 20 years ago when you were selling, right? Think of car sales, for example, and now you can just get online and you can print all of the information on the vehicle that you're going in on. You don't have to worry about getting hosed on the car lot anymore, because all of the information is available.
Yep.
So what sets people apart as the person who facilitates the transaction, the salesperson, is their level of expertise. And what we're finding in the marketing world is that the buyers today, especially when you look at the millennial buyers, and certainly Gen Z, even people call anyone who's young a millennial, but the youngest millennials are graduating from college and having families right now.
Yeah.
But 34% of all real estate agents are millennials right now, and they're quickly becoming the largest buying demographic of who is buying homes. And if you look at how they want a transaction, how they want to interact, they already know that all of the information is available on Google.
Yeah.
Right. And that's evident even in my life. My kids don't even ask, "Hey, Dad, do you know?" They say, "Hey, Dad, can you look up?" Right.
Exactly.
They know the information's available on my phone. So the buying behavior, what people are looking for is expertise. It's that positioning that you're talking about. It's, do I know your area?
Yeah.
And as real estate agents, so we have what's called market insights, and we have financial insights, and we have all of these things that really are to create this context, this contextual review of the neighborhood that you want to be working in. And so the market stats go into everything, again, that a real estate agent that's been in the business for a while knows how to go figure out. They could pull different reports from the MLS, or they can, do the calculations. But we're looking at everything of price per square foot to, what's gone on 7-day averages and days on market, and, average bedrooms. And we even break that into quartiles to say, hey, a price in your price range in your neighborhood or in this zip code, all the way down to a micro level, so that you can really speak to that. And as soon as you demonstrate that you have the expertise in the area, the greatest behavior of millennials is they don't want to look it up. They want a trusted advisor. They want a mentor. They want somebody who's going to guide them through that process. And as soon as you demonstrate that you're the guy, especially in a farming technique where you're just building relationships, literally the word is you're planting seeds to have, sow the fruit later, reap the rewards later. And so is you just demonstrate your expertise over and over and over again. So with our system and what we help people do, and I don't want this to be a sales pitch, we can get into some more of the strategies, but not only do we give you the name and the phone number and the address and the mailing address if they don't live in the property, right? Is we give you all of the market stats and all the financial and property stats, and our platform allows you to organize that so that you can continually reach out if you wanted to be on a call them once a month or mail them once a month or door knock once a month.
Yep.
Whatever it is, you could implement any system. We don't prescribe the system in the platform. We make everything readily available so you can apply that to whatever system you're implementing.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's really not just taking the information, it's curating it. And there is more information than people can keep up with. I've read a stat, I forget how much information comes out in one day just on the internet with YouTube and all that kind of stuff, is more than we used to ever have before. So people are bombarded with data and information, and the agent who will win is the one who can curate that and make it hyper local, make it about the community they're serving. And that's why I believe farming is so powerful, is because we can really take that national information, break it down to a regional information, break it down to a neighborhood information, and share how it's relevant and how it matters to the consumer. The sellers want to know what their house is worth in their neighborhood, not what their house is compared to the national average or their state or province or whatever. So it's really taking that and then understanding it. If you can speed up the process using something like your system, you can curate that a lot quicker, right, package it, and really make a difference. And that will help the positioning part, where you can become that expert a lot sooner. So from a community standpoint, one of the things I talk about all the time is really being that community ambassador for the community. So how can someone use that kind of data to help establish? Have you, like, obviously you have a lot of agents working for you. Are you seeing anyone using the data and taking it to the community level rather than just the sales level?
So I would say no, but let me explain. They're using the data to establish that expertise.
Yep.
But community is then about connection, and you can't connect on data, right? I mean, you and I could be like, oh, I'm this age and you're this age, but that's not where connection comes in. Connection comes in emotional. So I would say people are using it to get in the door.
Yep.
Right. And that's where, you strip away all of that insight data, and we give you names and phone numbers of the people in your farm, which is the most valuable thing.
Yes.
Because then you can call them, or you can, go knock on their door and have, know their name and things like that.
Yep.
Like if I'm starting out knowing that you're Ryan Smith and knowing some things, then it's easier for me to get in the door.
Yep.
Community is then created through those connections as you build relationships.
Exactly. That's why I asked. And I wanted to see, what are the agents that are using your services doing to take it from that to build that? Because it's one thing to have the data, and there's a lot of data driven information, but it's how do you take that and then take the next level? So what have you seen that works where people are using the data to say, now how do I build that relationship?
So this is the second time I'm deflecting your question, not on purpose, but let me tell you what they're not doing. So people, again, don't think that this is the easy button that they've always, if there was an easy button just to put commissions in our bank account, you and I wouldn't be on a podcast right now.
Exactly.
We'd be on the beach.
Yeah.
What they're not doing is they're not blanket sending an impersonal data-driven message to an entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work. It has to be individual. And that's why we try to get hyper local on some of the data points that we're giving. And that's why we start with contact information. It's not about the neighborhood. You might be in the geographic area that I want to own, that I want to farm and work.
Yep.
But the only way you and I are going to transact is if Curtis and Ryan end up having a relationship.
Yep.
So people, again, are using that data. We have a really cool stat that we got from surveys, about 6,000 surveys over the last few years, responses, and agents making over $250,000 a year. So this is, top producers. That's $250K in GCI. 60% still go out and knock on doors.
Wow.
And what's interesting is we followed up with agents saying, you make a lot of money. Why are you wasting your time knocking doors? And they go, waste time. Like, it's about relationships.
Yeah. 100%.
And if I spend the time to invest in Ryan Smith, then that's going to pay dividends long term. And there's no short-term sightedness with that. So knocking doors, I would say, is a big one. I know with COVID, that's going to depend on where you're at. Plus here, it's 5 degrees here right now, and you're not knocking doors there. But knocking doors, I would say every relationship starts with a conversation, not automation, is one of the things that I would say is probably a principle for everybody is they're picking up the phone and talking to them. and we could talk at nauseum about scripts and what to say in this, but I would say this: the most successful people, this is going to be a shock, are just really honest.
Yeah.
like, hey Ryan, I'm a real estate agent and I love your neighborhood, and I want to be the guy that everybody in that neighborhood chooses when they do that. And so I'm just introducing myself. That's the only reason for my call today. And can I get you on my newsletter? Can I get you on the community updates, or can I get you to join my Facebook group, or whatever medium you're using to try to maintain a group contact? There still has to be the individual contact.
Yeah, that's the person. That's the important part of it, that, like you said, to build the relationships. And like I mentioned earlier, I talk about CPR, and it stands for community positioning and relationships. And that's really the fundamentals of any farm. And that relationship side of it is where a lot of agents, I find, miss the ball, because they are so focused on the transaction, and they're so focused on the sales part of it, and they miss the relationships beforehand, during, and after the process. They're just looking for the next person who's going to buy. And a lot of the old school trainers are just saying, find someone who's going to buy now, and if they're not moving, move on to the next person. And with farming, it gives you an opportunity to connect, whether you start off with a name and an email address, whether it's you meet them door knocking, but when you do it correctly, you then learn to position yourself correctly as an ambassador and the expert, and then those relationships happen. And the relationships is where you're going to grow your business much more. It'll be a lot easier, and then you can be on a beach somewhere sooner than later, if you do it correctly.
Right.
So from a data standpoint, how do people, because in Canada it's a bit different, our rules around our privacy laws, how do people respond to having cold information being sent to them from, or how did you get my name? How'd you get my email address? How'd you get this information? Because I know here it's a bit different. We can't just pull up data like you guys have.
So you can still pull up neighborhood data in Canada. You just can't do it from the MLS. Like a lot of people here, and a very common practice is just listed to just sold. Yep. So they're going to look in their neighborhood, what homes sold. I'm going to call the immediate people, or call everybody and say, hey, did you know 123 Street just sold? Yep. We have a lot of people that do open houses and use our data to reach out to everybody in the neighborhood to say, hey, we're having an open house, come check out. Yep. And everybody's nosy. That way you pack an open house and creates a lot of buzz there. But so you could still do some of those things. In the States, though, there is more practices depending on what data you're getting. Like if there is a for sale by owner, you approach that person in your geographic area differently. Yeah. And or a vacant rental property, right? Which can become an investor lead or a referral to a property management company. And it's about that ripple effect of, it's not just about the transactions you can get in the neighborhood that you're working. It really is the ripple effect that starts to, is the force multiplier in your business of building relationships in that area. So I think, I don't know. Maybe I got off topic there. I don't know if I directly answered your question, but I think, people are using the data to call. The response is what you asked. Yeah. We actually coach people that, depending on how thick of skin you have, that calling cold in a neighborhood is the easiest phone call you'll make. It's even when you're calling, and of course we'll flag things if it's on the do not call list, and we will, we'll help you make sure you're having correct conversation. The point of transaction, they want a site now. Same with the for sale by owner, a little tougher. They're getting hit up by a lot of agents to try to sell the home. But calling a neighborhood and building a relationship is actually quite easy. And we tell people that's the best place to start. If you're going to bring the phone and picking up the phone and calling people, it's the best place to start, because there's very little conflict or, tough conversations.
And I always tell agents that if you come from value, it's a lot easier to make that phone call than coming from just saying, hey, you think we'll make a move? And again, a lot of old school trainers, they tell you to cold call and say, hey, you think we'll make a move? No. Hey, you think we'll make a move? Hey, you think? And that tends to be a lot tougher. It's a lot tougher to break into, especially in a farm. But if you're offering value, and I always say the more value you bring, the easier it is. And I use the example all the time is if you're in line at a grocery store and then they say, hey, go online and enter a chance to win $5 or something, it's not really valuable. If they said go online and get $5 off your next purchase, I'm much more likely to go online because it's a more attainable, valuable thing. So if you're doing any prospecting and you have value, you're coming from value, it's a lot easier to build that relationship than just saying, hey, you think we can move? And a lot of agents struggle because they feel like they're bothering people. They feel like they're not adding value to them. And they say, if I'm just calling and saying, are you moving? That's when they get hung up on or get told off. And when you do it with the right approach, it's so much easier. And I've coached a lot of agents who said, like, when you do it with the right approach, it just becomes so much simpler to do that.
Yep.
And the value is what's going to help you differentiate yourself as well. And then back to the farming part, like you said about for sale by owners, what a lot of agents, if they haven't farmed correctly before, it becomes easier to get the for sale by owners. It becomes easier to get the expireds. It becomes easier because they know all the other things you're doing. They recognize who you are. And I know in my own farm, when I started doing it, I did farming or FSBOs before that. And it was a completely different experience when I farmed the area and did FSBOs because they knew what I was about and who I was. And it just changes the whole demographic.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. And that's your whole strategy stacking. I love that term because that really is, I mean, you can work FSBOs or you could do farming, but if you do both, that's better. I mean, So I'm with you.
That's why using the systems like you guys have for expireds and for sale by owners and those kind of things layered into your farm becomes that much easier. And you could use your entire system in one specific geographic area, then try to do one of those in a giant broad area. You're going to get more out of it when you do it correctly.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So from your experience, what have you seen the most success of agents? Like what have you seen the most success coming from agents doing? Like what strategies beyond just the typical open house, just listed, just sold?
So, well, right now is really unique.
Yes.
So I'll tell you what we're seeing right now, which is this amazing strategy is people are almost reverse prospecting. I don't know what to call it. We need to come up with a term here, but they are actively seeking homes for their buyers, their buyer pool. And so because we have the information, you could pull up a geographic area and say, well, let's filter out, let's just find the ones with 4 bedrooms, 3 bath, with these characteristics. Yep. And now I'm calling you and instead I'm saying, have you ever thought about moving? I'm saying, hey, Ryan, I have a buyer that's been unable to find, and they want to move into your neighborhood. They are looking for a 4 bedroom, 3 bath home, and again, a lot of times that's just opening the door to create a relationship. But it's not it's authentic where this was a strategy before where you'd say, well, I got buyers.
Yeah.
But nowadays with how hot everything is and how quickly things are going, you really do have a buyer and you really do have someone desperate that really wants to find a home. And so we're seeing that, and we're seeing, again, it's not always that you find a buyer, although we see that a lot. In fact, there was an agent that I recently had on one of our podcasts who has two properties. One's a $4 million property, one's a $2.5 million property, because he was just calling, trying to find a home for a buyer. And he's got those 2 listings, but he's made a tremendous amount of relationships in saying, well, actually, we're not moving, but you know what? I'd be curious to know how much my home is worth. I can figure that out for you. Right. So, I would say right now in this market, that's the number one thing people are adding into what kind of the traditional things they've always done.
Yep. And in your farm, again, it compounds the effect, because if they see your other things, they know what you're doing there. They see you're active in the community. They see you even more working for the clients, working in people's best interest. If they've never met you before, never heard anything from you before, and got that one phone call, it won't mean anything. But if you layer that in with the other things you're doing, and they get that phone call, they know who you are. Hopefully, if you're doing your job right, they see that you're proactive and doing that, and it becomes easier to really strengthen those relationships. And that's something I teach agents all the time, to do that reverse lead gen, because it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And your client's happy because you're going above and beyond what most agents are willing to do. The public is happy because they get to see that, and then it just works well together, which is awesome. So using the other systems then that you've got, how have you seen agents use those, like just listed, just sold, or expireds and things like that within farming?
Are you asking how are they specifically working those lead
within
types?
a farm? Yeah, within
okay.
a farm.
If so, again, it's a strategy stacking. But if you have all of the different leads, you get a really good idea of what's going on. So we have all of the foreclosure data. We have the for sale by owner data. We have the vacant rentals and absentee owners, people who don't live in the neighborhood. You've got all of the active pending sold information on there. So when you can look at it, and when you can look in a neighborhood and you see all of that information, again, back to the first thing, that positions you really well to know what's going on, right? I mean, you just know what's going on. But also those create triggers for reasons to call people in the neighborhood, right? A home you see start to go into foreclosure. Well, again, if they know Ryan Smith is the realtor in this neighborhood, you can have a more authentic and real conversation. You don't have to pretend, a lot of data is used to give insight, but you don't really use it because you'll be creepy, right? But if I know you and I know the people and I'm known, I could say, look, I saw that they filed a notice of default on your home. But in this market, I think we could sell that home and you could actually put money in your pocket. Right. And it gives you a reason to call. So they're using the data again, not just to give insight, but it creates the trigger, the reason that I'm going to reach out to people in the neighborhood to say, hey, there was like 3 homes that sold in the last 5 days, but on average, every real estate agent right now is working with 4 different buyers. That means there's all of these people in the neighborhood. There's a reason to get out there and call.
Yeah. That's great. And again, figuring out that system and learning to layer it together correctly is how you're going to succeed. But you have to take the time to really stitch it together instead of just doing one thing. And so many agents get hung up on, I'm just going to do one thing, and then markets change, strategies change, rules change. And so you have to learn to piece that together. So obviously you guys do a lot of research behind the scenes. You said you do the 6,000 interviews or questionnaires. Where are you seeing trends shift to now going forward, especially with COVID? I've seen I started this at the beginning of COVID when this all started, and even within the last couple of years, I've seen strategy. So what are you seeing change as far as strategies?
So in terms of and we're actually preparing right now a state of real estate marketing. So we'll actually publish that report as soon as we get 10,000 responses. So we want to make sure that it's not just our opinion and not just our customers, but a wide, slice of the entire industry. But some insights that we're gaining from those surveys and interviews now is that people are the lead generation budget is going towards more expensive leads, which I'm terrified about, because that's a product of everybody making more money. Like we talked about, before we jumped on the recording here, is that people are making more money. And so they're like, well, I have more money, so I want to do something a little bit easier. So I'm going to pay. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pay for Facebook leads. I think, we generate a lot of business from Facebook for RedX, right? Yeah. It's a platform that works. But when you start looking at the cost per lead and the return on time, not just the return on the investment, but the return on time, you're trying to, again, buy something that's easy instead of putting in a system that creates consistent results. Yeah. Right. I can flip a home and make some money. And a lot of times that works. I could buy 10 rentals and that's going to pay me not just cash flow now, but in 10 years. Yeah. That creates wealth. Yep. And I think agents are anyway. So, but that's one thing. People are spending more money on lead gen that's costing more money. Yeah. But on lead gen that's producing a lower conversion rate. That's pretty common right now. And then the other trend that we're seeing is people are again, I think this is top of mind for me because people are making more money per transaction. They generally, so I don't want to offend anybody if they're struggling right now. I mean, every market's different and everybody's at a different place in their business, but generally people are working less, to get the home sold. And as long as they can match make a buyer and seller, it's happening, right? Yeah. And they're making commission. So people are investing less. So in 65 hours of interviews that we've recently done, one of the real common things is this regret. It's like this confession that they're going, oh man, I know I should be prospecting the way I used to, or I know I should be farming the way I used to. I'm just not right now.
Yeah.
And that's a negative trend that we're seeing that I think is people, it's going to bite people in the butt in the long
100%.
term, because again, the consistency now produces the income later.
Yeah.
And I mean, you call it farming, right? I mean, the whole point is like, I'm not going to get immediate results. This is like the long-term strategy. So I don't have to feast or famine. I don't have to grind and hunt and do some of those tactics, but we're seeing a shift towards hunting versus farming because it's easy and quick money and the cost per transaction is so high. Exactly. So I think those are some scary trends, I think.
Which is true. And that's something I talk about all the time. I use the food chain analogy of the hunting, and then we go to gatherers, and then to farming. And a lot of people used to be hunters in the business, then they went to farming, and then they said they're going back to this hunting model again. And people have lost the farming mentality because they look for the easy stuff. They look for the internet leads they can do anywhere. And then they are now starting to realize that the market's being flooded with everyone else doing that same thing. And so I would say, like, when people are zigging, you should be zagging. And a lot of people have zigged away from farming, and there's a lot of opportunity because people have given up that way of doing farming. But when you mix it with new strategies, new approaches, using the fundamentals of farming, you can really crush it, because there's not a lot of agents who are doing farming at a high level the way they could or should, and you just have to learn to actually do that. Yeah. So from a you said obviously the future is changing with online leads. How are you finding the leads from, say, cold calling, say from expireds and those kind of things, comparative to online leads? Because I know a lot of people who've tried online leads say, oh, this sucks. I hate these leads. How do you find the comparison between the two?
So I think there's a place for all of it,
right?
Depending on where you're at with your business. I think, I think people really ought to consider not just the ROI, the return on the cost of investment, the money side, but the ROT, the return on time.
Yeah.
And if you look at, pennies, you could buy data from us for pennies, but you've got to invest some time to turn those into something, that's going to create sustainable business.
Yep.
Or you could spend a ton of money and invest less time, $1,500 a month in Facebook ads, and you get a handful of transactions, and maybe it's a positive ROI. Yeah, it's small ROI, but also small ROT, and maybe that's worth it if you've got that money to gamble. But in terms of comparison, that's the answer for comparison too. Is if you have money, maybe you want to invest in lead generation things that maybe you want to put a billboard up, and you won't be able to track, but maybe you'll see business go up, right? Or maybe you want to invest some time for a very low dollar amount.
Yep.
You could call everybody, whether it's 500 or 2,000 people in a neighborhood. You could reach out and talk to everyone and see what that does for your business. And so in terms of, you have a much higher conversion, faster conversion, but it requires more time. Yeah,
exactly. And I talk about all the time is having your budget. A lot of people think of budget, think of just money, and it's money and time. And the other element that I talk about is the energy of how much energy you have to put into it. Because there are things that some agents hate doing. Like for me, I hate doing open houses. Some agents love it. They crush it at open houses. Right. I hate them. And it just zaps my energy. Or cold calling. I can do cold calling with the right approach, but I'd rather door knock versus cold calling. So you have to kind of budget in the time and then the mental, what I got to put into it too. And am I going to actually enjoy doing this over and over and over again? And if you are, and it's a good return on investment for you, then do it.
Right. Yep. I agree.
So if you were to give our viewers one last piece of advice, if they're thinking about using something like your services and want to really start using data to kind of get into their farm, what advice would you give to them?
So I have a lot of advice. I'm a pretty terrible salesperson to try to pitch the product, because genuinely, if you're not going to pick up the phone, or if you're not going to go knock on the door and you're not going to do stuff, then don't waste your money with RedX or any other system like that. Right. And if you don't, if you're starting from zero, don't buy anything. Just go out and start knocking doors and gather the names and phone numbers yourself. You don't, you don't need, but the advice I would give is back to, if real estate is notorious for feast or famine, right? People, and that's on an individual basis. There's all the memes that are making fun of this, right? You're either living the high life or you're scraping by, and we're about helping people create sustainability. And so the advice I would have is consistency, consistency over intensity, consistency over anything else. It's just, you don't have to go, you know what, I'm going to farm and that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to do it for 4 hours a day. And you don't have to do that. Why don't you just try to talk to 5 people you don't know every day in a neighborhood? That's it. Right. But you do that consistent enough and you will see the results. So consistency and then patience to see the results, because the tried and true stuff, it's like weight loss. I mean, there's a new fandangled app or pill or anything, but you know what? If you just eat right and exercise and you do that consistently, start to get healthy. It's like this mind-blowing concept. And in our business, you just talk to a few people you don't know, get to know a neighborhood really well. Over time, you're going to be like, wow, I'm top 5 in the area, top 1 in my market, because you were consistent over time.
Exactly. That's great advice. And it's so true, but people want that instant results, and it's hard to switch human behavior, because if they just realize that they would have way more success. And again, in the long run, it will pay them dividends. So, which is awesome. So we always wrap up with one last book. So your best book. So what's one last book that you'd recommend that you think has had an impact on your life or would have an impact on our viewers' lives?
You even warned me about this. And I have so many great books that I can't just give you one. So if it's okay, I give a couple. Sure. Right. So I think very fitting. It's the first of the year, but this is applicable anytime. Is Daniel Pink When? And you see these people. Anyway, it's a great book about how to set the right goals and how and when, and it matters how and when you set those goals and when you do things. And I would say, I'll give you a hint to farming now is the best time, right?
Yes.
You start right now if you haven't started already. That would be fitting, just because of the rhetoric going around right now about goal setting and things. Yep. But the most impactful book for me has been the Willpower Instinct. And I really like psychology. I studied psychology and marketing, and I think the Willpower Instinct and anything that gives insight into how we can get control, because of, this crazy brain of ours and allow us to build proper habits in anywhere in our life. It helps us to be happier and to be more successful. So that's awesome. The Willpower Instinct.
I'll put those in the show notes, and that ties back to your advice, which is that consistency, the willpower. If you have the willpower and you stick with it and you do that consistency, you'll see it. So that's awesome. So we'll put those in the show notes. So how can our viewers check out what you're up to, find out what you're doing, and connect with you and find out more about RedX?
So if you just Google RedX, REDX, our website is redx.com. We have a podcast just like what Ryan's doing here. We'll probably have Ryan on our podcast to help other people, and we're just trying to help people figure out their business, and we're all in this together. So go to RedX, and there's different deals and things you can get there, but just engage with us. You don't even need to come by first. Come kind of hang out and see if it's something that we can help in your business. And if so, if the products make sense, then great.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can check that out. So Curtis, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you bringing the insight, the wisdom behind the scenes from what you've learned, and also the real life experience that you've experienced with the agents you're working with as well. So I know our viewers are going to really appreciate this and get a lot of it. So thanks for being on the show and sharing that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.